Jessica Kleinschmidt covers.
Why is it the
A's,
first time,
works for-
Scott?
That's a great question. Well, Foul Territory is pretty new, but I mean, I worked at a number of other places and I had zero control of the guests. And I requested you to mark behind the scenes. I said, hey, can we bring Jessica on? Because also, we'll get into some A's stuff and how the team's doing, obviously. But really, I want to talk about your awful announcing gig. It's one of my favorite sites for years. And to just break down like the Derby and the All-Star game and all of that and what you see from like a broadcast and entertainment perspective. First off, thank you for joining us. How you doing?
I'm good, guys. It's great to be on here. Pierzynski, Kotz talks about you all the time.
Kotz? Who's Kotz?
Kotze.
Oh, God. What does he say?
We can talk about that later. We'll get into it later.
No, this is unfiltered. You can talk about it right now.
Here's what I don't understand. Everybody comes on here. Every person we have new just comes on and just fires at me. Nobody ever takes a shot at Kratz. Nobody ever takes a shot at Scott. It's always
I took a shot at Scott saying this is their first time being on a show together. So I started with Scott. So that's why I was warmed up for you.
Okay, I also accept shots. AJ fires back.
No, I don't know her, so I can't really say anything.
Also, she didn't say anything bad. She said Kotz talking about you all the time. He probably loves you.
I miss Kotz.
Yeah, it was just how when y'all would struggle. I think it was mainly when Kotz would struggle at the plate. I think I heard a story. Y'all went down the foul line in Chicago and lit the bats on fire at one point.
Go on.
They did a lot of dumb stuff.
Yeah. We were talking about slumps and stuff, and he said, yeah, one time Pierzynski and I went down the foul line and we lit bats on fire. So
because they weren't working.
Yeah, exactly.
Working. Listen, when your bats aren't working, try anything. I used to break them on purpose because they sucked and they deserved it. It was the bat's fault. It wasn't my fault.
It's never our fault, right? We blame whatever we're using. I'm right there with you.
So when your typewriter goes off, you break it.
Typewriter? How old do you think I am?
I'm old. Or when
my laptop. Yes.
When your
it's
laptop.
always the laptop's fault.
People use laptops now.
You're like American Airlines. My iPad has the keyboard like Scott's. We're taking off. They're like, you can keep watching your iPad. You just have to take it off the keyboard.
No.
What the fuck? It's the same thing, you dumb lady. It happened on the way here. Alaska Airlines. The lady comes up to me and goes, you have to take your...
I'm going to stop you there. They're a sponsor. That's not
one of our favorite sponsors.
Do not talk about Alaska.
It's not Alaska Airlines' fault. It was the lady's fault.
You had an amazing flight, and you said
I love Alaska Airlines. It was great.
Just because you had,
but I just don't understand why I got to take my keyboard off my iPad, but then I can fold the keyboard over and put the iPad on top of it. Now it's two pieces.
Speaking of dumb rules,
sorry, Jessica, we've sidetracked.
No, it's great. It's great. It's fine.
Jessica, a question for you. One of my theme questions this week with the draft the other day, and we had Tony Clark on today, and I asked him too. Should we be able to trade any MLB draft pick? I'm trying to spice up the draft more and get it to a more casual audience, and I still feel like we're struggling there. I believe the ratings were down when I looked this morning at some articles from Awful Announcing, and Comeback might have put some on there as well. But imagine if the other day during the draft, sure, we're pumping up the next stars of tomorrow in the game and all that, but we're also mixing in the Tigers are in sell mode. They're going to get rid of a reliever plus Eduardo Rodriguez or Michael Lorenzen, who's in the game right now. And they're going to pick up the 25th pick from Team X. That would be awesome.
I would say so. And the timing would be perfect because of where they're at in the season on top of bringing the guys in. And it was a little bit of a different vibe, too. The guys were actually physically there, which was more of like the NBA, NFL type of style, which I really appreciated. So imagine something going off and Manfred having to announce that. The booze would just be times 10. And, you want to get the fans involved in that regard. So I think that'd be really cool. Absolutely.
You guys are into it, right?
Yeah, but how can we make the draft better? The best way to make the draft better, the reason it works for the other leagues is people know the players. They don't know, what's his name? Max Clark from Indiana at Franklin High School. They don't know Walker Jenkins. They don't know these kids. Now, they might know a Dylan Cruz or Paul Skeens.
Yeah, and the only reason why I knew about Dylan Cruz was because they compared him to Kotze, because Kotze was the Golden Spikes winner, and then also won the World Series in the same year. So same thing. I don't know much about it. If I didn't have like best friends covering the draft, I wouldn't know these guys either. So there's got to be something done. And I know the College World Series is fun to go to. It's fun to cover, but they need to take it a step further and be like, these guys are like the next superstars, and we need to highlight what they're doing. We need to market them better. And especially knowing it's going to be difficult though. You get drafted and you have to spend some time in the minors, but we have to maybe embrace that more. Like, congratulations on your amazing signing bonus. Hope you like Stockton, California. Like, embrace that a little bit more. That kind of a vibe.
I have a A's question for you. Jessica broadcast for the A's as well. Should Brent Rooker be the representative? He was awesome. Great story in the beginning of the season. Hot start. But is he the best overall player currently on this edition of the A's?
Currently, I would say yes, because Estee Ruiz is on the IL at the moment. But I know where you're going with that. Ruiz is in the same sentence as Ricky Henderson. And if you're in the same sentence as Ricky Henderson, there's obviously something going for you. And you're right. Brent Rooker had the hottest start out of any batter I've ever really seen, period. Definitely cooled off, but no different than adjusting. When you start off, the pitchers are going to figure you out just as much as he figured the pitchers out. And he's actually having a really good series. He had a good series. Obviously, the A's got totally swept by the Boston Red Sox, one of the hotter teams in the league. But he was able to figure things out, and I feel like he's hitting the ball well. He obviously got that ground rule double just now, and I think that he's figuring some stuff out heading into the second half. And I love his story, but I think at the moment, and he also was voted in by the players. Don't forget that. That's definitely something to remember. And I think they voted knowing what he did in the first half, the guys, or the first couple of months, and they knew that. But I love what Estee Ruiz is doing. I think he's definitely going to be in Rookie of the Year talks. I don't think he's going to get it over one Mr. Boston Red Sox guy, because that guy is definitely, I'm stoked for him. We just saw him over the series. But to have a guy that's got the green light without getting technically the green light, and like I said, being compared to Ricky Henderson, you can't really argue with that.
Yeah, for Ruiz is having an awesome season, stolen base wise. But yeah,
and runners in scoring position. He's ridiculous with runners in scoring position. Yes.
43 stolen bags in the first half is insane. I know stolen bases are up a ton. But also, I mean, I was going to give credit to Ryan Noda as well, who's been an on-base machine. 381, no BP is really good. I know he's not.
He can really see the strike zone. I want to borrow his eyes for everything. But he's struggling a little bit heading into the second half, striking out a lot, but he can get on base.
And Rooker picked it up a little recently as well. Again, I know he kind of was falling off, and I see he's now at 826 with the OPS, 135 OPS plus. So I guess he is probably the best current hitter over the first half of the season for this team, and kind of the best story, because they had some bright times and he's been a big part of that.
I think he's the best Rule 5 guy since Mark Hanna for the A's.
Okay. Jessica.
Yes.
Since everyone seems to have their opinion, do you like the uniforms?
I don't mind the uniforms. The helmets are a fucking joke. I can't with the helmets.
Just the block A and the block N?
You know what it reminds me of? I have the perfect metaphor for the helmets. You know how there's a movie and there's a sports team there, but it's not the main character. It's like there's a random baseball team in it. And so they give the baseball team a hat to wear. And it's like, hey, just put an A on there. Just put an N on there. That's what that looks like. Like, there's a sports team involved in this movie, but they're not the main guy. So that's what we'll do. That's what it reminds me of. I can't with the helmets. It looks like last minute they're like, oh shit, we got to get like a helmet on here. Like, let's figure this out. That's what they remind me of. I don't mind I don't mind the uniforms.
It's Great Britain in the WBC.
100%.
What about Michael Lorenzen's cleats?
Oh my gosh, the Vans all day, baby. I love those. I live in California. That's like, it's like if he had an In-N-Out burger in his hand and he threw a complete game, like, amazing. I love that.
If you love that and you live in California, how much longer are you going to be living in California if you're going to still be employed by the A's?
We're going to be in Oakland next year. I know that for a fact.
But from there, it's all up in the air.
Well, they're saying 2028 is a possibility when it happens. So we're not like rushing toward that. I'm not making any moving plans and nobody else is. But, people, we talk about that in the broadcast all the time. You want to think about moving to Vegas when that might not happen until 2028. So we're not trying to worry about
2028
for the actual move. Yeah.
It's too far down the road.
What?
I like it.
They got 5 more years to suffer through?
Tough times
I guess
right
so.
now.
Yeah.
Hey, Jessica, question for you. Since one of your jobs is with awful announcing, what's the take on foul territory?
Honestly, we really embrace it because, I'm coming from a spot where I've been told to be careful what I say on certain broadcasts that I've been on in certain newsrooms I've been a part of. And it's nice to see, no holds barred and just really embracing the real stuff. And that's my favorite part of the job when I get like Dallas Braden on a podcast or I sit on a panel with him and we're just real. And that's my favorite part is introducing the fans to the real guys, who they actually are. You want to talk about Brent Rooker's numbers, that's great, but let's talk about the fact that he was on 4 teams in one season. He's very humbled. He's a Triple Crown winner for the SEC. Only 2 dudes have done that before. But I want you to know who Brent Rooker is as the person. Like, yes, of course, the All-Star selection's going to be on the baseball reference page, but I want you to know more about these guys. And like you mentioned, Ryan Noda, Rule 5 guy, really great guy too. And even Alana Rizzo talked about like this guy's in the Dodgers. I remember him from the Dodgers, and now you know him from getting the opportunities here, and being able to introduce those guys to you is a part of what I like to do. And I feel like Foul Territory does a beautiful job of that too. It's real, it's honest, and you guys played the game. You understand what was, and then Scott, you covered it from a certain perspective where you definitely had to hold back behind the curtain. I know that. So being able to not have to do that, that's great for you because you want to be real. You have to stay true. Like we're not going to mess up injuries and you don't want to do things out of context, of course, like that. But we want to be able to introduce the conversation and make it a real, legitimate situation. So you come back, you're entertained, but you learn something as well from the right people that lived it.
You know what? I feel like I was living in a bubble and I was more restrained than I thought in my previous world. And then you step outside of that bubble where like basically all you were talking about was stats because all of like the cool stories you couldn't get too deep into or the convos couldn't go too long. There's so many rules, right? With TV for a buttoned up league. And then you leave that and you realize the awesome baseball community is not talking about what you're talking about in your little bubble. Like stats are cool and we bring up stats, but you can't just spit stats all day.
You can copy and paste stats. You can do that. You click on a page, they're there, whatever. And of course they're going to be, and we chose to cover a sport that is defined by numbers. But I like AJ, if somebody's talking about you, Eric, especially when they talk about Kratz, they're talking about how amazing he was behind the plate and how great he was to have as a catcher. And in that regard, numbers are important, sure. But when you're talking about the person that you are, Kratz, I remember covering you a little bit with the Giants. And just when you retired, it reminded me of Stephen Vogt because I had to cover Stephen Vogt when he retired. And there's something special about a veteran catcher. There's something so special about that guy behind the plate. You call the game, you develop the chemistry with the guy. And I've never heard one bad thing about Kratz. And I feel like that's because nobody comes up to me and is like, oh, you know what his batting average was in this year or how he was with the Yankees. Nobody talks about that. They talk about who you are as a person and what you did for them as a teammate. And that's the stuff that you guys get to talk about. And you guys could easily look up numbers. Numbers are fine, sure, and you want to stand by that. Me as a woman who didn't play the game, I have to go by the numbers because I didn't play like y'all did. But at the end of the day, I still want to learn from you guys and introduce the information into that. And I feel like that's imperative too. And you guys lived it.
I noticed you didn't say that about me.
She said, you're right.
Heard amazing things. Not one bad thing about Kratz. And she's like, and Scott's cool.
Yeah.
And he burned bats.
Jessica, what do you want to hear from the players that we're not asking them? What are we missing as a show? Because we have, to me, I think we have an awesome platform and we have an awesome ability to do exactly what you said. What are we missing?
What are you missing? I feel like the daily grind is definitely important. And I'm not talking about waking up and going to the field. I think about and I actually think about Tony Kemp. He missed 24 hours of his All-Star break because of a travel situation. And, his wife finally got to have him back after all that time. I know you guys, of all people, understand the grind of that, not being able to see your families as much as you possibly want to. And I feel like reminding the people that you're a human being. I don't want to be all like brownie and, puppy and soft about it, but I feel like that's definitely important, because at the end of the day, you take your shower, you put your normal clothes on, you go home. That's definitely important as well. But I also want to know, honestly, like the transition is something interesting to me, because like I mentioned Stephen Vogt before, he could have gone to media, but he ended up going to coaching, and he could probably eventually go to media. But like the transition of that is something that I'm really intrigued by. And you want to figure out what you guys are going to do after the game, and I've seen a lot of these guys who don't know what to do with their hands after their schedule's gone. They don't get on the bus anymore. They don't know, like, airports. Those guys don't know what airports they fly into because of the charter jet. And I want to know, how do you guys adjust to that? And when you guys are talking to them, remind us, like, we had a transition too. You eventually have to do that as well. That's something that I feel like could be a really interesting conversation, because I talked to Tony Gwynn Jr. about it before, and he's like, yeah, I thought it'd be okay on camera because I'm used to being on camera, but it's different in studio. It's different as an analyst. It's different, hanging at the batting cage with the different guys. So there's a transition period that I'm always curious about. And I feel like even talking to the guys about that, like, eventually you have to transition, and obviously you don't want to fuck up what they're doing right now because they're playing, but that's something that hits them quite quickly. Like Chad Pinder retired, but it took him a while to actually retire because he was only getting minor league deals after he left the A's. What was that like? That's a whole thing that people don't think about. You guys have your routine and you stick to what you know, and then that's gone one day. Like, that's a real thing that I feel like people don't talk about enough.
Can't argue. That's the number one thing you hear. When you get done playing, what am I going to do?
But you're like,
players ask me when I go see them, like for Saturday games, how'd you get into broadcasting? Because when I'm done, I have no idea what I'm going to do. So it's a big thing. And I think I will say this, the Players Association has gotten better about it, about educating guys on having something to do. But I tell people all the time, you got to have a hobby during the season, off season, and then when you're done, because if you don't, guess what? You come home, your wife's there, who we haven't seen forever because you're gone 6 months. Even though you're there, you're still
and that's
gone.
an adjustment too. Then you're like surrounded by this person way more than you were used to. That's a whole thing too. I think about that constantly.
Yes.
Then you're like, do we even like each other? No, I'm kidding.
Well, no, what you lose is the miss me factor. So you're gone. So you go on a road trip, you come home. Oh, I missed you. Well, guess what? When you stop playing, there's no more road trips.
The absence makes the heart grow fonder. It's not sexy anymore. Like I could understand that. Yeah.
If you want to spice up your relationship as a former player, join us at Foul Territory and we'll take you on the road. I'm going to make like an ad for it or something, like having trouble in the relationship, need to spice things up. Boom, Foul Territory is going to Cincinnati in a week.
Join take us. An ad out on Twitter for it.
Wait,
I also could. What?
Is she a Twitterer or is she a threader?
I just
Twitter
got on
now,
Thread.
Okay.
I'm mainly Twitter. I'm an OG Twitterer.
AJ, like very naturally, right before we started on the live stream tonight, I was like, "Yo, hit a tweet that we're going on or something," and AJ was like, "I'm a threader now."
He's like
that's not even true. You're not a threader yet.
He's like a 5-week-old Twitter.
You have it.
Maybe when you talk to the guys about, because Eric, I know you were curious what to talk to the guys about, don't ask them if they're on Thread. I feel like that wouldn't go over well.
Don't ask them?
Maybe. I don't know. I think it'd be kind of a weird thing to ask.
Okay.
Or ask them and just like walk off and see what happens.
No, that's actually a good question. Like, are they paying attention to the Elon Zuckerberg battle that's going on right now, right? Where
maybe
Twitter's
they're betting
fading,
on the fight or something.
or the cage match, which we actually are working on setting up Clemens against Piazza live from Madison Square Garden, broadcasted by Foul Territory. Yes.
I love that.
Yes, exactly. Also, I can confirm
I feel like Canseco would get in on that too.
Who?
Canseco would get in on that too.
He would try to, but he needs to not.
Yeah, but who wants to really fight Canseco?
He's already done it. He's done those.
Yeah. He wants to fight.
Well, I guess
he
has
wants
done it.
It's tired.
He's a
Piazza versus Clemens.
That's epic.
Wired. I'm into it.
I love that.
They both said they would do it. It's just the problem is I got them to both get into it by saying that they'd get 15 mil each, and that's probably not true as Rutschman flies out. So we're
Here's
still 2-1 through 7. AL's winning, by the way.
First random A's fan.
Who?
Fisher. First random A's fan.
Enough.
Cage match.
One more for Jessica. So my favorite part of what we're doing right now is asking players about topics that go on around the league, like, hey, Manoah got sent down. Like, what do you think about it? From like another player or a guy that used to play with him, like, or you played against him last year, or Chas McCormick the other day, which didn't get covered enough. He smacked a ball or tried to smack a ball out of the first baseman's hand, whoever that was, and it was super weird.
Right.
And we asked like Lance Lynn, and he's like, I would have drilled his ass. Like stuff like that's cool. So just throwing that out there.
No, I love that. I think that's great. And I had Lance Lynn on the show not too long ago. He's a great interview because he's perfect for this show. He's very honest and open and doesn't bullshit. And I appreciate those people. And that's why I have him on A's pregame as much as I possibly can, because I know I'm going to get the real thing. Also, sorry about the background. This is not a hostage situation. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah, it's fine.
I'm doing fine.
We want to know what's beyond the purple curtain.
I'm totally fine. I promise. Yeah, no, I actually take a break on All-Star break, and I'm actually doing that. So that's why I'm not at my home studio.
Oh, I love that. Okay. Well, we'll let you enjoy the break because we got more guests that are in the waiting room. So, Jessica, thank you so much for swinging by and everything that you do. I'll give it a plug when we let you go. And great to talk to you on a show.
Definitely. Thanks, guys, so much. Appreciate it.